the human who woke the armor. The derelict war shrine drifted in silence above a dying red star, a broken monument of forgotten battles. For centuries, alien champions had entered its hollow halls seeking to claim the living relic, called the crown plate, a suit of armor said to have chosen the first conqueror of the stars. One by one they were judged and rejected. No being, no matter how strong or advanced, had been worthy. Some were burned to ash by its defense light. Others fled screaming as the relic whispered their fears back at them. Over time, the shrine became a test of pride, then a graveyard, and finally a legend whispered in cautionary tones. The galaxy learned to leave it alone. That changed when a small human salvage ship named Aurora's Edge approached the shrine's orbit. Its crew were not warriors or treasure seekers. They were scavengers and dreamers, men and women trying to scrape together enough credits to keep their colonies alive. Their leader, Aaron Hale, was quiet and often underestimated. He was an engineer by trade and a historian by obsession, always chasing stories of the Starborn, the rumored ancestors who once shaped machines that could think and feel. The rest of his crew teased him for believing in myths, but they followed him because his ideas often turned junk into miracles. The shrine's exterior was riddled with fractures, half buried in asteroid dust. Aaron insisted on going in despite the warnings from his navigator and the nervous mutters of the others. He said it was a data run, a chance to collect ancient schematics that might help repair a power grid back home. When the doors of the shrine opened for him with a low hum, he felt something old and waiting on the other side. Inside, light rippled along black metal walls engraved with symbols that no alien had ever deciphered. The air vibrated faintly like a heartbeat. At the center stood the crown plate suspended above a platform of broken crystal. Its surface was dark at first, then shimmered faintly as Aaron stepped closer. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt recognition, as if he had found something lost from a forgotten dream. He reached out without knowing why. The armor came alive. Energy spread like sunlight across its surface, and the entire shrine flared to life. Across the nearby systems, ancient satellites long thought dead transmitted one message in hundreds of tongues. The crown plate has awakened. For the first time in recorded history, it had accepted a bearer. The light faded, and Aaron found himself standing on his knees, wrapped in metal that breathed with him. It moved like muscle, not machine. His crew called to him through the comms, panic rising as the shrine began to shake. He could feel their fear as if it were his own heartbeat. The armor spoke in his mind, not with words but with intent. It asked a single question, a question that echoed across his thoughts. "Will you share or will you rule?" Aaron whispered. "I will share." The armor pulsed once, bright as dawn, and settled. The shrine opened its outer walls as if bowing. The Aurora's Edge rushed in, catching Aaron before the structure began to crumble. He was dazed but alive, his suit still glowing softly. As they fled orbit, alien patrols began converging on their position, their sensors screaming that a forbidden relic had bonded to a human. In the chaos, Aaron discovered the armor was not merely protection. It streamed data through his senses, showing maps of long-lost human outposts, hidden in nebulae and moons. It also showed warnings, ghostly traces of battles where the crown plate had last been used, battles that ended worlds. He realized the galaxy would come for him now, not because he was dangerous, but because every empire feared what humans might become if they remembered what they once were. As the salvage ship slipped into faster-than-light jump, Aaron looked at his trembling hands encased in living steel. The armor felt heavy with history, full of voices like echoes in a deep cave. His crew stared at him with awe and fear. He met their eyes and said quietly, "We did not steal this. It chose us." The moment he spoke, the armor responded with a faint pulse, almost like approval, and the galaxy began to panic. The oath and the price. The journey back to the outer colonies was long and tense. Every jump through deep space carried the hum of pursuit. The Korith Empire's patrols searched the lanes, broadcasting bounties for the return of the human who had bonded with the crown plate. They called Aaron Hale the usurper of relics, a thief of sacred technology. But Aaron knew the truth. The armor had not been built by the Empire's ancestors. It had come from something older and deeply human. Each time he slept, he dreamed of hands like his shaping light into metal, of engineers and poets building together before the galaxy had split into empires and subjects. He woke from those dreams feeling both proud and burdened, as if history itself demanded he make things right. When Aurora's Edge finally reached the fringe world of Luma's Rest, the crew found their home colony changed. Imperial banners hung from government towers and tax collectors patrolled the streets. Humans had long lived under the shadow of stronger species, tolerated but never trusted. Now, with word spreading that a human wore the forbidden armor, suspicion burned hotter. Aaron could see fear in every glance that followed him. To the people, he was a spark that might bring either freedom or ruin. Sarajin arrived 3 days later. She was a historian from the outer academies, known for her defiance and her obsession with the Starborn myths. Her hair was silver from the chemicals of old archives, and her eyes sharp with knowledge that most had forgotten. She had come because she had seen the same transmissions that echoed through the galaxy. When she met Aaron, she bowed slightly and said the words every human child learned in stories. The Starborn rise when hope falls. Irene told her he was no legend, only a mechanic who got lucky. But Sarah smiled and replied that luck is just another word for readiness. Together they began to study the armor. Its surface could reshape into any tool Aaron imagined, but each use drained his strength. He learned the first rule of the crown plate, that power demanded balance. If he took without purpose, it burned him from the inside. Sarah helped him map the armor's internal circuits, and they found markings similar to human DNA patterns. The armor responded to honesty, rejecting deception and aggression. It wanted a partner, not a master. One evening, as a sandstorm howled over Luma's Rest, Sarah told Aaron what she had found hidden in ancient transmission logs. The armor was not a weapon alone. It was a seed of the Starborn lattice, a network designed to connect human minds across worlds so they could solve problems together, not fight alone. The Korath had destroyed most of it centuries ago, fearing such unity. Aaron listened in silence. He realized that if he let the Empire capture him, they would twist the lattice into another chain for domination. He swore then that he would never let that happen. The next day, Imperial agents came to Luma's Rest disguised as traitors. They offered the colony governor a fortune to turn Aaron over. The governor hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear. When Aaron learned of the bribe, he did not run. Instead, he met the agents openly in the town square. The crown plate shimmered faintly under his worn jacket. He spoke calmly, telling the crowd that no single person should own the power of the Starborn, that it belonged to all humans. The agents mocked him and drew their energy blades. Before anyone could act, the armor reacted on its own, unfolding into a shield that deflected the strike and sent the attackers sprawling. The people gasped, not at the violence but at the mercy. Aaron had not killed them, even though he could have. After the agents fled, the colony's leaders came to him. Some were inspired, others terrified. They asked what he planned to do next. Aaron said he would rebuild, not rebel. He used the armor to repair broken water systems, stabilize mining equipment, and teach children how to code maintenance drones. Each act spread calm instead of chaos. People began to believe that the crown plate could be a tool for creation again, not destruction. But the calm could not last. One night, a smuggler named Dren arrived at the colony, his ship riddled with burns. He carried a warning. The Empire had marked Lysa 9, another human world, for extermination. They meant to draw Aaron there, to bait him with innocent lives. Aaron looked out at the horizon where storm clouds flashed. He knew it was a trap, knew he might never return, but he could not ignore it. The armor pulsed with his heartbeat as if it agreed. He turned to Sarah and his crew and said the words that would carry them into history. If the Empire wants me, they will find me standing where humans need me most. As Aurora's Edge lifted from the pad and rose toward the stars, the colony watched in silence. No one cheered, no one spoke. They simply stood together, united by a quiet certainty that something greater than fear had begun. And somewhere far across the stars, Imperial commanders watched the human ship vanish from their scanners and whispered to each other that the panic was only beginning. Trial by fire on Lysa 9, the world of Lysa 9 shimmered with heat from its copper deserts and long salt plains. It was a mining colony where humans worked in silence under the banners of the Korath Empire. The sky was full of dust and the air always carried the taste of iron. When Aurora's Edge came out of jump above the planet, its sensors filled with signals of war. Imperial cruisers were already in orbit, their guns locked on the cities below. Aaron Hale stood at the viewport, watching the clouds of fire spread across the horizon of a world that had never known peace. He felt the weight of the crown plate on his shoulders, the armor whispering its readiness to fight. But Aaron's heart told him that this battle could not be won with strength alone. He had to outthink an empire that had conquered galaxies. They descended through the storms, guided by old mining beacons that flickered like dying stars. On the ground, the crew found chaos. Families fled toward the canyons, dragging what they could carry. Children clung to machines older than their grandparents, praying that the next bomb would miss. Aaron moved among them, calm and deliberate, his voice steady even as the sky thundered. He ordered the crew to help evacuate the workers into the tunnels. Sarah Jin, quick and tireless, found a communications relay and began sending coded signals across the colony network. Every miner, farmer, and pilot who could hear her voice received the same message. Stand together and do not give the Empire the fight it wants. The Korath warden in command of the assault watched from orbit with cold fascination. He had studied human behavior and concluded that humans fought hardest when cornered, so he planned to crush their spirit before they could rally. He did not understand that desperation and creativity often walked hand in hand. When his dropships descended toward the main settlement, they met not resistance but confusion. The streets were empty, the power grids were dead, and the radar showed hundreds of false signals moving through the canyons. The humans had turned their mining mirrors and reflector sheets into a field of illusions. The warden ordered fire at will, and the cannon struck only sand and smoke. In the heart of the storm, Aaron worked. He had connected the armor's interface to the old weather towers that once controlled dust shields for the mining operations. The crown plate's living circuits reached through ancient human software, as if it remembered the language of its makers. The towers began to turn, shifting the desert winds into violent whirlwinds. Dust filled the skies and hid the movements of the people below. In the confusion, Aaron led teams of workers to disable key targeting relays and trap the Korath forces in their own blind zones. It was not a grand battle, but a war of small, clever steps, each one guided by the shared resolve of ordinary people. Sarah coordinated everything through shortwave bursts, using the colony's abandoned mining frequencies. She could feel the pressure in her head as the heartline, an early pulse of the Starborn lattice, began to awaken between the humans working across the planet. They were not fully linked, but they shared instincts now, finishing each other's plans without speaking. It was as if the crown plate's energy had touched them all, teaching them to think as one while still remaining themselves. The Empire could not model that kind of connection. Hours turned into a long night of survival. Aaron's body ached with exhaustion as the armor demanded more energy than any human could give. Every time he pushed it, he felt it draw from his heartbeat. During one of the fiercest bombardments, a section of the main habitat collapsed, trapping a group of miners. Without hesitation, Aaron dove into the ruins. The armor strengthened his limbs enough to lift entire support beams, but with each motion, his vision dimmed. When he finally carried the last child out, his knees buckled and the crown plate's light faded to a faint glow. He collapsed beside them, barely conscious. The battle shifted as word spread across Lisa 9 that the human in the armor had saved lives instead of taking them. The miners, driven by hope instead of fear, began to strike back with their own tools. They used drills to bore through the Korath vehicles, turned conveyor belts into launch rails, and built makeshift cannons out of refineries. Every act of defiance was small, but together they formed a storm that no fleet could control. By dawn, the warden realized he was losing more than ships. He was losing authority. He ordered a retreat to orbit, vowing to return with a fleet large enough to erase the world from existence. As the last enemy ship vanished into the sky, the people of Lisa 9 gathered in the main square. The air smelled of dust and smoke, but also of freedom. Aaron stood among them, weak but alive, the crown plate dimmed to a simple sheen. He looked at the survivors and saw not soldiers but builders, the same kind of people who had once shaped the first human stars. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered that this victory would not stay secret for long. The Empire would come again, and next time they would bring every weapon they had. Aaron nodded slowly. He already knew that this battle was not an end but a beginning. That night he sat alone beneath the cracked towers of the old relay station. The crown plate spoke again, not in words but in images, a map drawn from light showing the path to a place called the First Forge. It pulsed with meaning, a promise, and a warning. Aaron understood that this was where the next step waited, where the true purpose of the armor would be revealed. He looked toward the stars, toward the distant glow of the forge, and whispered to himself that humans had survived worse than fear. The wind carried his words across the dark. and the world listened as if it already believed him. The first forge on the Heartline. First forge was not marked on any star map and existed only in whispers traded among old spacers, who claimed that somewhere in the ice rings of a forgotten moon slept the birthplace of starborn technology. Aaron Hale guided Aurora's edge toward those coordinates carried within the crown plate's living memory. The journey through deep space took weeks, and every day the armor fed Aaron fragments of ancient voices. They were not commands, but memories of humans who had once built wonders together. The voices spoke of unity and shared purpose, of tools made to lift rather than destroy. The more Aaron listened, the more he understood that the crown plate was not a weapon meant for one man, but a bridge meant for all. When the ship emerged from jump, they found the forge's moon hidden behind the tail of a dense nebula. The surface glittered with ice fields that reflected the faint light of distant stars. Beneath, the crust sensors detected a hollow core stretching for miles. The crew descended through a fissure and entered a cavern lined with frozen towers of metal that looked almost grown rather than built. Sarah Jin studied the structures with reverence, her breath fogging in the cold air. She said softly that this was no simple laboratory. It was a place of testing where the Starborn judged intent before granting power. They found the entrance to the main chamber sealed by a gate of shifting symbols. The symbols responded not to touch or tools, but to thoughts. Aaron stepped forward and placed his hand upon the gate. The crown plate shimmered, and the patterns rearranged themselves into shapes that pulsed with rhythm. It was a test not of strength but of honesty. The armor mirrored his heart and revealed his doubts, his hopes, and his fear of failing those who followed him. The gate accepted him when he admitted he was afraid but would act anyway. It opened in silence, revealing a vast hall filled with crystalline machinery frozen in time. At the center of the hall stood a structure that resembled both a machine and a living organism. Its core was dark but faintly pulsed as Aaron approached. The crown plate responded by releasing filaments of light that connected with the structure. The chamber awoke. Energy rushed through the forge like blood returning to long-dead veins. Holograms of humans appeared around them, speaking in ancient dialects that the armor translated through Aaron's thoughts. They spoke of the Heartline, a creation that allowed humans across systems to share ideas and instincts instantly, forming a single vast mind that never erased individuality. It had been the Starborn's greatest achievement and also the reason they fell, because empires feared such unity and destroyed it. Sarah listened, her eyes wide with wonder. She understood that if they could awaken even a fragment of the Heartline, humanity could stand together again. But Aaron hesitated. He knew that power-connecting minds could also control them if twisted. The forge sensed his conflict and shaped a projection before him, an image of countless human faces looking upward with hope. It asked not with words but with feeling, "Do you trust them?" Aaron answered yes. The core flared and sent out a pulse that traveled through the armor and into the ship above, then beyond to every human signal within range. In mining colonies and refugee stations, people suddenly felt something new. It was not telepathy, but a subtle awareness of others, a warmth that made them act together without needing orders. Pilots adjusted their flight paths in harmony. Engineers solved problems in parallel, and families in hiding felt courage instead of fear. The Heartline had begun to breathe again. Their joy did not last long. Alarms flashed on Aurora's edge as Korath ships appeared at the edge of the system. The Warden had tracked them through old Imperial beacons. He knew they had found something powerful and meant to end it before it spread. Aaron ordered the crew to hold position while he and Sarah prepared the forge's defenses. The armor guided him to control panels that responded only to human touch. He used them not to fire weapons, but to generate a cloaking field that bent light and sound. For a brief moment, the forge vanished from sensors. A traitor among the refugees betrayed their location, desperate for safety. Yet when Aaron found the man hiding in the corridors, he did not punish him. He saw a father terrified for his child. Instead of anger, Aaron offered him protection. That act of mercy rippled through the Heartline and strengthened it. People across the network felt his compassion and mirrored it. The Empire's assault came swiftly. Energy blasts struck the ice crust but dispersed against the forge's field. Aaron and Sarah worked together to channel the power through the crown plate, stabilizing the entire structure. At the height of the battle, the forge produced a surge of light that washed across the system, forcing the Korath ships to retreat before their instruments failed. When the storm cleared, the forge was silent again but alive, its purpose fulfilled. The humans of nearby worlds began to report strange dreams of stars connected by threads of light. They spoke of hearing distant voices guiding their hands while they repaired machines or tended crops. Sarah realized the heartline was spreading faster than expected, awakening the dormant network hidden in old human code and satellites. Aaron stood at the center of the forge and made his vow. The power will not belong to me. It will belong to everyone who chooses to build instead of destroy. The crown plate shone bright and the forge echoed with a hum that sounded almost like approval. As Aurora's edge left the frozen moon, the crew watched the glow of the forge fade behind them. Aaron felt the quiet pulse of the heartline through every breath. For the first time since the crown plate had chosen him, he did not feel alone. Across the stars, the first spark of unity had returned to humanity, and the Empire, sensing something it could not control, began to move its fleets once more. The Empire sets the trap. The galaxy seemed quieter now. But Aaron Hale knew that silence was only the prelude to a storm. News of the heartline spreading through human worlds had traveled faster than the fastest ships. Every colony that had been isolated, every miner and farmer who had thought their small life insignificant, now felt a pulse of connection they could not explain. They were learning, thinking together, planning without knowing it, and the Korath Empire noticed. The warden who had been forced to retreat from Lysa 9 gathered a fleet at the edge of the arid verge, a gas giant system whose rings hid remnants of old battle stations. He had studied Aaron's movements, tracked the expansion of the heartline, and now devised a plan to trap the human in the crown plate. The warden called it the Grand Tourney, a show of relics and champions designed to lure Aaron into the open, to draw him into a cage from which he could not escape. When Sarah Jin first heard of the tourney, she shivered. The Ring of Vorth, where it would be held, was a place of old machines and concealed weaponry, a place humans had avoided for centuries. Aaron studied the coordinates in silence. He could feel the armor pulsing at his skin, sensing the danger before it arrived. He knew that walking into the warden's trap could mean death not only for him, but for every world the heartline had touched. Still, he could not leave those humans unprotected, not after everything he had seen. They would face the Empire alone if he stayed away. He told the crew that they were going, not to fight for glory, but to save lives and prove that humanity would not bow to fear. Families evacuated in silence from outer stations as word of the tourney spread. Children carried small training plates like fragments of the armor, curious and excited, oblivious to the danger ahead. Adults packed stores and loaded what equipment they could move, moving with the precision of people who had survived far too long under occupation. Aaron's team coordinated every evacuation. Pilots practiced maneuvers designed to confuse scanners, engineers planted decoy devices, and Sarah linked the settlements to the heartline so that each action could be shared instantly with everyone involved. The network hummed quietly like a river under ice, invisible but unstoppable. Aaron spent hours alone in the hangar, running simulations in the armor's interface. The crown plate offered him battle paths that would have allowed him to destroy the warden's fleet almost instantly. Every path was perfect, flawless, and efficient, but Aaron felt unease. These solutions were not human. They lacked the creativity born from mistakes, from improvisation, from mercy. He rejected them. He would lead humans to fight not like machines, but like people who refused to yield, using whatever tools, minds, and courage they had. He chose a messy plan, one full of risk and uncertainty, and the crown plate hummed, acknowledging the choice. The approach to the Ring of Vorth was tense. Sensors detected layers of hidden weapons, decoys, and cloaked observation platforms. Every turn of the debris fields threatened collision. Yet, under the guidance of the heartline, crews across multiple human worlds made adjustments to their routes, anticipating the dangers and correcting course in perfect timing. The warden's fleet loomed ahead, massive ships bristling with energy turrets, each designed to force the humans into submission. The tourney had been announced as a festival of relics, but everyone on the field knew it was a trap. Aaron felt the weight of every life relying on him. Yet the armor's pulse reminded him that unity was stronger than fear. As the first wave of enemy fighters arrived, Aaron directed civilian drones and repurposed mining vehicles into obstacles and diversions. Human ingenuity turned every scrap of machinery into an advantage. Nets became kinetic traps. Cargo holds launched improvised projectiles, and maintenance bots dragged heavy supplies to block choke points. The warden's sensors were fooled, targeting phantoms and empty corridors while real humans slipped through the chaos. Sarah coordinated communications, giving precise but non-obvious commands, allowing the heartline to extend across vessels and tunnels. Humans did not speak to each other. They thought together and acted together as if connected by invisible threads. In the chaos, Aaron found himself on the central platform of the ring, a place designed to display relics for public viewing. The warden had deployed his champion here, a heavily armored alien who had been trained to overpower any human. The duel began not with brute force but with anticipation and strategy. Aaron moved with the crown plate as if it were an extension of his body, every motion calculated but unpredictable. The warden's champion advanced, confident, but underestimated the creativity of humans who think and adapt. Aaron drew the champion into the machinery, using rotating arms and conveyor belts to limit movement without harming it. The heartline echoed through his mind, showing him pathways to evade and trap without unnecessary destruction. As the skirmish grew, the warden unveiled the final component of his trap, an override designed to seize the crown plate and cut off the heartline. For a moment, Aaron felt a cold warning pulse, the armor resisting the attempt, but the strain on both of them was immense. The crown plate responded to his resolve, amplifying his thoughts, and Aaron realized that by sharing the armor's authority with the heartline, he could protect it from being hijacked. He extended the network across the vessels, across settlements, weaving coordination into a living defense. The override failed. Humans everywhere adapted instinctively, confusing the warden's forces with unpredictability, ingenuity, and relentless persistence. Even as the battle raged, Aaron saw moments of hope. Refugees and ordinary civilians acted like soldiers without being trained. Families saved one another, children carried supplies, and the smallest acts of courage multiplied through the heartline. The warden's fleet could not contain this. By turning the tourney into a rescue and survival operation, humans had claimed the battlefield without surrendering to fear or tyranny. As night fell across the ring, Aaron stood among the chaos, crown plate shining faintly in the dim light. The Empire had underestimated humans again, and Aaron knew that this was only the beginning. There were more trials ahead, more sacrifices to be made, but the heartline was alive. The forge had awakened, and humanity was learning to fight as one. Every heart that beat with courage and every mind connected by the Starborn network was proof that the galaxy's calculations had been wrong. Fear had underestimated creativity, tyranny had underestimated unity, and the humans of the stars had begun to rise. The ring where legends break. Ring of Vorth shimmered like broken glass orbiting the gas giant, its surface littered with wreckage from centuries of forgotten battles and abandoned stations. The warden's fleet surrounded the outer edge of the ring like a predator circling prey. Aaron Hale stood on the deck of Aurora's Edge, feeling the pulse of the crown plate against his chest. The armor thrummed with awareness, as if it could sense the danger. Before the sensors could pick it up, he knew that this battle would decide more than just survival. It would decide if humanity could stand together against a galaxy that had always assumed they were weak. The crew moved, around him tense but ready, their minds linked. Through the heartline, each thought coordinated, across distances that once would have required hours of planning or days of travel. The warden had prepared for them more than a trap, he had prepared for legend. He deployed ships in patterns designed to cut off escape routes and force the humans into narrow corridors where brute force would be overwhelming. Every drone and sensor beam seemed to anticipate human tactics. But what the Empire did not understand was that human thinking was chaotic, creative, unpredictable, and Aaron was at the center of that chaos like a conductor guiding a symphony of improvisation. The first skirmish began when small human vessels emerged from behind asteroids using debris as cover. They fired improvised charges and released false signals to confuse targeting arrays. The warden's fleet responded with overwhelming force, but each attack met unexpected resistance. Humans turned scrap into shields and launched debris with precise timing. Inside the ring, Aaron moved with the crown plate guiding him, its living metal flowing over, his body enhancing reflexes while remaining connected to the heartline. He could feel every human linked to the network, anticipating his moves and adapting their own. He used the terrain to full advantage, weaving between broken platforms and ancient turrets, drawing enemy ships into traps while civilians and engineers disrupted systems with whatever tools they had. The battle was not graceful, It was raw human grit, tested to the limit, but every strike, every maneuver was amplified by collective thought that the Empire could not model or predict. The Warden realized the Crown Plate's bond with the Heartline was stronger than anticipated and decided to intervene personally. He boarded a central station within the ring, bringing his own enhanced suit designed to override any technology it came into contact with. The confrontation was immediate. Aaron met the Warden on the observation platform of a greenhouse dome overlooking the shattered ring. Debris floated in the thin gravity like stars caught in a storm. The crown plate flared brightly at the presence of the Warden, threatening to unleash all of its power, but Aaron held it back. He could feel the armor offering paths of lethal efficiency, paths that would end the Warden in seconds, but Aaron rejected them, knowing that victory gained through slaughter would break the Heartline's trust. They fought not just with fists and strength, but with strategy and improvisation. Aaron manipulated machinery with the crown plate guiding his movements, creating obstacles, while the Warden relied on raw power. Each time the Warden swung, he found his attacks diverted by clever placement of panels, shifting gravity, and the coordinated actions of humans linked across the ring. The armor whispered suggestions, but Aaron filtered them, choosing the most human paths, mistakes, and mercy woven into every action, giving his crew and the civilians around him the ability to adapt and survive. The climax came when the Warden activated a final failsafe, a series of energy conduits that threatened to detonate the ring itself to eliminate both humans and relics. Aaron realized that only by merging fully with the crown plate could he channel its power through the Heartline and absorb the blast without destroying the network. He stepped into the core of the station, letting the armor flow over him completely, consciousness stretching into the Heartline, linking every human mind connected to the system. He felt their fear, their courage, and their hope all at once. He focused not on destroying the enemy, but on guiding the energy outward, turning the Warden's own trap into a shield for the living. The explosion rippled across the ring, but was contained by the collective effort of the Heartline. Every human connected acted as part of a single organism, shifting energy, stabilizing debris, and maintaining life support. The Warden was forced back, stunned and disoriented by the unexpected unity and ingenuity of humans he had assumed would cower under pressure. His fleet faltered and retreated, unable to overcome the improvisation, courage, and raw connection of the human minds working together. When the pulse faded, Aaron collapsed inside the crown plate, spent but alive. The ring had survived the Warden's assault, and the Heartline remained intact, stronger than ever. Humans across the systems felt the surge of collective accomplishment and survival. It was not a perfect victory, but it was proof of what humans could do when united under trust and shared purpose. Aaron opened his eyes and saw Sarah rushing toward him, the crew surrounding him, their faces filled with exhaustion, awe, and relief. The armor now glowed faintly but steadily, a symbol that the human spirit could channel extraordinary power without surrendering humanity. The Warden had been defeated in spirit, if not yet captured, and the galaxy would remember the day that legends were broken and remade by ordinary humans who refused to yield. Their ingenuity and unity had rewritten the rules of engagement, showing that no empire, no matter how vast, could calculate the unpredictability and creativity of a connected human heart. The crown plate pulsed once more, as if acknowledging the victory not as a weapon, but as a teacher, and Aaron knew that the next step was already waiting, beyond the ring, for humanity to rise even further into the stars. The day the galaxy stepped back, when the last of the Warden's ships had limped away from the ring of Vorth, silence fell across the debris-littered expanse. The humans who had survived looked at each other with exhaustion and disbelief, and a spark of triumph. Aaron Hale stood among them, the crown plate's light now steady and calm, not aggressive, but alive. With quiet power, he felt the pulse of the Heartline through every fiber of his being, a hum of connection that reached across colonies, across planets, across light years of distance. It was not just his victory, it was humanity's, a shared triumph built from courage, creativity, and trust. Sarah Jin guided the crew and civilians to organize the survivors of the battle. They treated the wounded, repaired damaged equipment, and shared resources across the connected settlements. Through the heartline, every action was amplified, every mind coordinated without anyone needing to give orders. Aaron watched the effort and felt a rare sense of peace. The crown plate had chosen him not to dominate but to enable, to turn fear into unity and desperation into action. Across the galaxy, human colonies began reporting unusual awakenings in systems long abandoned. Some spoke of hearing distant thoughts guiding their hands. Some felt the presence of others during crises without understanding why the heartline had begun to spread beyond the ring itself, teaching humanity once more the ancient lesson of shared purpose. The warden, captured and restrained aboard Aurora's edge, was neither killed nor humiliated. Aaron had refused the crown plate's suggestion to strike in vengeance. Instead, he offered the alien a chance to witness human unity, to see that power could be wielded without tyranny. The warden was silent at first, pride and disbelief warring within him as he observed humans coordinating in perfect chaos, building and saving rather than destroying. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and cautious. He asked why they had not used the armor to annihilate. The fleet Aaron replied that fear is a weapon too easily turned against the wielder, and trust is stronger than any calculation. The warden did not understand, but he began to record and relay the events, unknowingly spreading the story of human ingenuity further than any fleet ever could. Sarah Jin and the crew broadcast the Starborn charter across the systems. It was a declaration that no human could be denied access to the heartline. That power would not be hoarded by one person, one colony, or one fleet, but shared among those who chose to build rather than destroy. Every colony, from the smallest outpost to the largest city, received the message as a beacon of hope and unity. Humans no longer had to hide or cower under the shadow of stronger empires. The galaxy had calculated them wrong again, and now would have to adjust to a force it could not predict. Aaron returned the crown plate to the shrine where it had first awakened, placing it upon the pedestal and speaking to it not with commands but with respect. The armor folded its living metal around the pedestal, shimmering with quiet recognition. It would answer only to those who sought to create and protect, not dominate. And destroy the forge on the frozen moon continued to pulse quietly, its heartline humming beneath the surface of human civilization, ready to awaken when needed. Children ran across the colony squares wearing simple training plates, mimicking the movements of the crown plate. They laughed and stumbled, but their eyes shone with awareness of connection, of the threads that bound them to each other and to the past. Humans had learned again that unity could create strength, far beyond what any single warrior could wield. Aaron walked among them without his helmet, feeling the sun on his face, hearing the pulse of life, and knowing that the future would be different, not because of fear but because of shared courage. The galaxy did not panic now. It paused and recalculated humanity as a variable it could not control and could not predict. Aaron knew that there would be challenges ahead. The Warden's empire would attempt strikes and schemes, and other empires might rise in fear, yet humanity had learned to act as one without losing individuality. The heartline would be their guide, the crown plate a reminder, and the lessons of trust and courage their legacy. Aaron looked toward the stars, the vast expanse filled with endless possibilities. He smiled at Sarah and the crew, knowing they had done more than survive. They had rewritten the rules and proved that human ingenuity, creativity, and unity could defy empires and survive across centuries. The day had come when the galaxy stepped back, not because humans were the strongest, but because they were the unpredictable variable that could break calculations and open possibilities. They had won, not through domination, but through connection and the quiet, relentless power of shared purpose. Humanity was ready to rise, and the stars waited for them. Final rise, humanity's choice. The stars stretched endlessly above the ring. Vorth and Aaron Hale stood at the edge of the observation platform, feeling the crown plate hum softly against his chest. He had survived the impossible, and the armor had not made him a conqueror, but a guide. The heartline pulsed beneath his feet, connecting humans across worlds. Every thought, every act weaving a network of courage and creativity that no empire could crush. Sarah Jin stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the glow of the ring and the distant lights of human colonies slowly awakening to the call of unity. The warden had been captured not by brute force but by trust and cleverness. He sat restrained in a containment cell aboard Aurora's edge, watching the humans who had outwitted and survived his fleet. He had expected to see fear and chaos, but instead he saw collaboration and resolve. He did not speak of surrender, only observation and calculation. And slowly he began to record every movement, every decision, every improvisation, as if trying to understand the unpredictable nature of humanity. Across the systems, the Starborn charter had spread like a quiet storm. Humans once scattered and fearful now moved with purpose. Every settlement, every mining station, every colony connected by the faint pulse of the heartline. Their actions were coordinated not by orders, but by understanding engineers, repaired life support systems in unison. Farmers synchronized irrigation and planting. Humans shared knowledge and instinct across light years as if distance could never divide them again. The galaxy began to notice, not with panic, but with careful reevaluation. The humans were no longer an underestimated people. They were a force, born of cooperation, ingenuity, and trust. Aaron returned the crown plate to the ancient shrine where it had first awakened its living metal, folding gently around the pedestal. The armor responded to no one now unless they approached with honesty and intent. It waited not for a master, but for a partner willing to protect, to build, and to share. Its light glimmered softly, and the forge on the frozen moon beneath the ice hummed quietly, sending threads of the heartline outward, ready to awaken when humanity needed it most. Children played with training plates, laughing, falling, learning the rhythms of the armor in simple motions. They did not yet understand the weight of history, but they felt the pulse of connection, the echo of courage, and the first lessons of unity passed down like a song across generations. Aaron walked among them without helmet, bare hands brushing against the metal of drones and machinery, smiling at the small sparks of creativity blossoming everywhere. He looked to Sarah and the crew who had risked everything alongside him and felt a quiet satisfaction. The galaxy had been forced to reconsider what it meant to face humanity. Not because humans were the strongest or fastest or most armed, but because they were unpredictable, inventive, and capable of standing together without losing themselves. The Warden's fleets would return, other empires would test them. Yet Aaron knew that humanity had learned to act as one while remaining many. The pulse of the heartline was steady and alive beneath the colony floors and the satellites orbiting distant moons in the minds of humans, waking to the call of unity. The crown plate rested quietly, waiting for the next worthy act of creation, not destruction. Aaron turned toward the stars, a soft wind brushing his face, feeling the endless possibilities stretching beyond the horizon. Humans had survived, humans had learned, and humans had risen not by domination, but by connection and courage. The galaxy would remember the day humanity refused to bow and showed that trust. Creativity and shared purpose could challenge any empire. The sun rose over the colonies, bathing the training children and the survivors in gold light. The armor's glow flickered faintly in the distance, a promise of readiness without threat. The heartline hummed like a quiet song threading through space and time. Humanity was awake, alive and free, ready to build beyond the calculations of any empire. The end.